Mykelti Brown has now pulled the curtain back on her father's meticulously created reality TV persona. What she exposed about the purportedly authentic family moments we've seen for 19 seasons will make you wonder if it all was a setup. Mykelti and her husband Tony settled in to watch the premiere of season 19 of SisterWives, anticipating the typical blend of family drama and Kody's usual shenanigans. What they got instead was Mykelti dissecting the whole production live. Take that sentimental first day of school scene, for instance, where Kody is presented as the doting father figure. What we perceived as a tear-jerking family moment was actually entirely staged. Each moment of it was set up because TLC was in need of some content. And on that morning, the family had nothing going on. Watching this scene again with this new information changes everything. Now you notice it. Kody just seems so misplaced, messing with the toaster oven as if he's never made use of one. He squints at it, not sure how to make waffles. He refers to his son's school supplies as school equipment, speaking as if he is some extraterrestrial attempting to be a typical dad. And when he's combing Solomon's hair, it's apparent that Solomon can do it just fine on his own. None of that is Kody's true function in the family. Kody doesn't get involved in the morning routine. Mykelti says he'll drive the kids to school every now and then, but breakfast, inventory check, brushing hair, no way. TLC required some footage for the show, so they staged it. Kody cooperated, never having learned how to pretend to be a hands-on parent. The most disturbing aspect of this disclosure is when Robyn awakens Ariella, ostensibly for the camera. That moment when Ariella is bewildered and hesitant isn't nearly morning irascibility. It's a child waking up to a camera crew in her face being made to perform a family moment for the network. What sort of parent would elect to put filming ahead of their child's comfort and integrity? Mykelti's account rings differently because she lived it. She's not some outside observer making guesses about editing stunts or producer manipulation. She grew up in that home. She had her father perform for cameras her whole life. And now that she's an adult, she's matter-of-factly describing how the Kody we saw on television wasn't struggling because he was charmingly unaware. He was struggling because he doesn't do these things when he isn't performing for cameras. Think about all those moments when Kody is set up as the patriarch, involved, managing numerous households. Doubt everything. Every time he was the worried father, managing complicated family issues. Take a step back. Mykelti just told me that all of this was staged. But that's where it gets even more complicated. Those fake parenting moments were only the beginning. What Mykelti uncovered wasn't merely about staged moments. It went far beyond reality TV gimmicks and into more profound, disturbing systems of belief that affected the family's health during a pandemic. Mykelti didn't just reveal a staged moment. She showed us how SisterWives makes content when nothing is going on. And for all the fans of reality TV who spent years watching, believing they were witnessing a true family dynamic, all of this makes everything different. TLC operates on a straightforward premise. They require footage. They require storylines. They require dramatic moments and tear-jerking family scenes to keep the audience captivated. When real-life moments are not organically available, production creates them. It's not documentary making, it's scripted reality constructed to resemble an authentic experience. So if nothing was happening on a Tuesday morning in Kody and Robyn's home, somebody made the choice, let's do a segment on the kids getting ready for school. Let's have Kody be the engaged dad, making breakfast, styling hair, and packing school lunches. Let's wake Ariella up, camera ready for a third grade first day. None of it was true. All of it was manufactured simply to provide airtime. The toaster oven scene is painful to view now. Kody simply has no idea how to use it since he's never cooked breakfast for the kids. He struggles through Solomon's hair because he doesn't do it normally. He refers to school supplies as equipment because he's never packed a school backpack in his entire life. What the audience perceived to be a sweet, lovable dad doing his best is really a guy totally out of his league, frantically trying to accomplish simple things that actual involved parents tend to do without giving it a second thought every day. Robyn's participation is also telling. She had to wake Ariella in for the cameras, had to rush her off to school, had to go along with this staged morning routine. Not because it mirrored their actual family life, it was because TLC needed footage. And when Ariella pushed back, bewildered by the cameras in her face the moment she awoke, that real response made it onto the show. But instead of presenting it as what it was, a kid's normal distaste at being recorded in her most intimate moments, it was presented as normal morning defiance. Christine's book also confirms this cycle of deception. It revealed that what the viewers watched on SisterWives wasn't a real reflection of life in the Brown home. The acting was ongoing, the manipulation was profound, and the children, they were unwitting props to a program that cared more about content than authenticity and their welfare. The actual harm was done by the belief systems that Kody embraced, impacting much more than morning routines. These beliefs did serious harm to family relationships, particularly during one of the biggest health crises our generation has seen. Christine's book revealed a startling fact about the last few years of their plural marriage, which helped explain a lot of the family's dysfunction at the time. Kody had plunged into an abyss of online conspiracy sites, namely the vile depths of the internet referred to as the manosphere. And it was not just browsing. This world engulfed him totally. For those unaware, the manosphere consists of a group of web forums in which men post increasingly radical ideas regarding gender, dating, and society. It's a forum where healthy skepticism turns into out-and-out conspiratorial theories. All mainstream institutions are suspect, and lone men feed each other's most paranoid notions, totally losing connection to reality. Kody leapt into this world with both feet. He began to believe things that just weren't true, consuming content that reinforced his biases and provided him with increasingly radical theories about how the world functioned. And much like many of those who end up falling down these rabbit holes, he didn't do it alone. He wanted Christine to believe it also. He insisted on these hypotheses on her tirelessly, teaching her to view the same videos, read the same pieces, and adhere to the same distorted reality he had adopted. But Christine wouldn't go along. She wouldn't read the conspiracy material. She wouldn't play along with his sourcing being real. She wouldn't accept beliefs that directly conflicted with simple facts and plain sense. And that refusal caused enormous tension in their already troubled marriage, because Kody couldn't stand hounding a wife who wouldn't accept his new reality. That offhand remark about the phone body in the orchestrated school morning scene, it wasn't arbitrary. It was a direct product of Kody's conspiracy mentality. Kody and Robyn had learned entirely unsubstantiated health statements from their internet sources and accepted them as gospel fact despite a lack of verifiable medical evidence to justify their concerns. They truly felt cell phones in pockets were responsible for causing testicular cancer and infertility issues, not because there was any valid research behind it, but because some person in their internet echo chamber said it confidently. This trend did not end with medical problems. It carried over to every area of life: medical choices, social relationships, family dynamics, even political opinions. Kody ran every area of his life through these conspiracy-focused spectacles, And Robyn did not counteract his beliefs. She reinforced them. They built a closed system supporting each other's increasingly radical viewpoints. For anyone who's ever seen a partner vanish down the rabbit hole of the internet, this relationship dynamic will seem uncomfortably familiar. The individual you knew is now unrecognizable, and discourse becomes impossible. You're no longer operating on common facts. Your issues are dismissed as brainwashing by the mainstream media, and before long, you can't talk someone out of a position they never talked themselves into. But the worst ramifications of Kody's conspiracy mindset did not occur until the pandemic. Kody's distorted perceptions of health and safety didn't merely stress relationships. The vaccine reduced transmission and severity. It saved thousands of lives in the early days of the pandemic. Those aren't inflammatory assertions, they're documented fact. But Kody and Robyn inhabited an entirely alternate reality, one in which vaccinated individuals were somehow viewed as disease vectors, and the unvaccinated regarded themselves as victims of all the other people's so-called reckless compliance. On camera, Kody and Robyn exhibited concern for CDC protocols. They cited physicians, pretended to adhere to guidelines, and conducted themselves as if they're stringent rules issued from medical authority. Behind the scenes, however, they were taking their cues from the very same conspiracy websites that had previously influenced Kody's perception on so many other topics. These websites propagated misinformation. They possessed no medical credentials, and they informed Kody and Robyn precisely what they wished to hear. With more of the family members receiving the vaccination, things changed. Suddenly, those adhering to real medical recommendations, attempting to return some sense of normalcy to family life, were painted as the bad guys. Kody and Robyn viewed them as a danger, accusing them for the space that they had created. The excuses just kept mounting. The isolation deepened and the manipulation intensified. But this is the point Soren stressed most. She doesn't think it ever really had anything to do with the vaccine or actual health issues. It was always just another excuse, another means Kody used to control the family, another means by which he could get away from the people he didn't care to be around, while claiming it was their fault for the distance he had put between them. The family believed they were all going through the health crisis together, but in fact, they were being manipulated by Kody, whose views had become influenced by increasingly unsafe sources on the internet. And nowhere was this more true than in Kody's adoption of one of the internet's most infamous conspiracy movements. Kody didn't merely dip his toes in conspiracy theories by Christine's book. He went head first into the QAnon rabbit hole, and he did so with a frightening level of enthusiasm. His slogan, "Where we go one, we go all," which was seemingly an irrelevant phrase, now makes horrific sense when you know that it is a QAnon rallying cry. For those new to QAnon, it's a conspiracy movement that said anonymous government sources were posting cryptic clues about clandestine cabals and political scandals. It gained enormous popularity and tore families apart, taking vulnerable people down a rabbit hole of increasingly radical ideas, utterly detached from reality. And what makes this even more egregious is that it was all fabricated, a complete lie. A documentary titled Q Into the Storm carefully unraveled the whole hoax. Director Colin Hoback traced the individuals who were operating the site where these alleged insider messages were seen. He interviewed 8chan's creator and dug deeply into the individuals operating the site, eventually finding out the truth. A guy named Ron Watkins, the son of the website owner, had no insider connections whatsoever. He was simply creating it up to get traffic on his site. Ron found that he liked the power, the influence, and the adoration. He continued posting more and more complex conspiracies, and people continued to treat his stray ideas as inside information. It was all an art piece masquerading as reality. And it spread like crazy because it provided some audiences with just what they were wanting to hear. When COVID struck, Ron turned to health misinformation. He was broadcasting false information about the virus and the vaccines with no medical background or scientific knowledge whatsoever. He was just typing out whatever sounded sensational enough to hold his listeners' attention. And the disinformation took off, getting picked up and magnified until government agencies and news outlets were debating theories with no foundation in reality. And Kody was drawn into this world, believing these falsehoods as fact. It makes a lot of sense of his actions throughout the pandemic. The illogical rules, the allegations against vaccinated relatives, and his utter disdain for real medical advice. Kody wasn't listening to scientists. He wasn't heeding doctors or public health experts. He was listening to conspiracy theories based on someone with no credibility, someone who confessed his whole operation was a scam. Christine saw her husband lose himself in this universe, opting for online disinformation over his relationships with his family. She saw him use fabricated health issues to rationalize keeping everybody around him isolated and under his control. And Robyn didn't just go along with it. She championed it. She enhanced these distorted assumptions, some of which were actually quite strange regarding ordinary technology. Robyn continues to insist that cell phones lead to testicular cancer and severely reduce sperm levels in men with no basis in fact. Mykelti substantiated the continued belief, and it beautifully demonstrates how entrenched conspiracy mentality had become in that family, even when the cameras were off. Let's get clear on the science. Cell phones release non-ionizing radiation, which does not harm DNA in a way that would initiate cancer. It's fundamental physics. The radiation that causes cancer is ionizing radiation, which cell phones don't produce. Some studies have suggested that carrying a phone in your pocket might slightly raise scrotal temperature, potentially affecting sperm quality, but even those findings are inconclusive and self-reported. No major medical organization has warned that cell phones cause infertility. But Robyn accepts this untested hypothesis as fact. She won't let her children keep phones in their pockets on the basis of fears entirely unsupported by reputable medical evidence. And the same woman who played over-concerned about CDC protocols on TV had no problem ignoring real medical consensus regarding vaccines. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. Robyn and Kody posited themselves as the health-conscious family members who obeyed all the protocols and heeded medical experts. However, their actions were a different tale. They accepted only medical facts that were in line with the conspiracy theories they had previously adopted. Whatever was not in accordance with their own story was portrayed as mainstream brainwashing or dangerous compliance. For women who have worked decades making informed choices regarding the health of their families, this sort of selective belief system is insulting. We know how to investigate. We know how to analyze sources. We can distinguish between reputable medical associations and random claims on the internet. And we can detect manipulation when we see it, particularly when someone feigns concern for safety while utterly disregarding actual expert advice. Kody and Robyn's conspiracy theories extended beyond health disinformation. Mykelti's observations regarding the family dynamics reveal something even more revealing. Even fans who have been watching for 19 seasons may have misjudged the relationships between the SisterWives themselves. Mykelti was observing the episode in which Christine, David, Truly, Aspen, and Mitch were all on together, and Janelle made a somewhat passive-aggressive remark about David. That's when Mykelti made a comment that recasts years of sister-wife dynamics. Mykelti had an observation that fundamentally changes the dynamic between the sister wives. Year's audience thought they had this figured out between Christine and Janelle, but Mykelti explained it in a way that sees something more. Christine and Janelle, by the way, wouldn't be friends if they had met in other situations, Their bond is because they shared children and spent decades working through a complex family situation, not because they emotionally resonate with one another. Mykelti described it aptly. Janelle's a thinker, a pragmatist. She's quiet, analytical, and views the world from a logical stance. Christine, as a dreamer, is flighty, imaginative, and emotional. They have essentially opposite personalities, and they wound up in each other's lives due to the fact that they both married the same man, and not because they would have otherwise chosen to be friends. But there's the catch. Mykelti thought that David, Christine's new husband, could really get along with Janelle. David's got a special gift for relating to anyone. He's funny, interested in people, and not arrogant or egotistical enough to create barriers. He's boisterous like Christine, but uses his boisterousness in a way that is open to all kinds of personalities. Mykelti opposed the notion that David is perceived to be arrogant, describing how he's simply very enthusiastic by nature and others like being around him. If Janelle were to meet him today, beyond the context of plural marriage history, she could very well find herself growing fond of him and feeling too removed from Christine to be best friends. Though Christine and Janelle do look out for one another, care about each other, and appear when they can, Mykelti wouldn't necessarily call them traditional friends. The tie between them is one of shared children and years of dealing with the nuances of plural marriage, not of natural friendship or liking. Seeing their interactions through this new frame of reference makes their tensions more comprehensible. For example, Janelle bristles noticeably when Christine offers words of encouragement or concern. It irks her when Christine implies she may need assistance, or when Christine is concerned about Kody's manipulative nature. Something beneath is driving this pride maybe, or something more complex that causes Janelle to push back against Christine's sisterly ministrations. The continued production of the show contributes to crafting content from relationships that would otherwise naturally fall apart if not for the presence of cameras. Yet at their heart, the inherent incompatibility of their personalities is exacerbated by something much more sinister. Janelle's refusal to accept Christine's nurturing reveals an important aspect of the way cult-like programming persists even after one has physically escaped the system. Don't get it twisted. What these women went through was cult conditioning. It was programmed to maintain them compliant, isolated, and resistant to recognizing their own exploitation. Observe how Janelle responds when Christine expresses concern over Kody's manipulation. She becomes irritated and defensive. It's like she's punished by Christine's observation that she needs help because it erodes Janelle or reveals a vulnerability she cannot afford to display. This response is not from a position of healthy autonomy. It is the result of years of conditioning that instructed these women that being vulnerable or accepting sympathy is a weakness. The mentality they had been taught in that setting instructed them, you don't get to feel, feelings make you weak. It reinforced the idea that talking about the priesthood holder, Kody, in negative ways was a transgression against their religion, and that the fact that they needed help from other women indicated that they weren't sturdy enough to deal with plural marriage alone. Therefore, rather than embracing help, they shoved it aside because recognizing that they needed help would also mean that the whole system had failed them. Janelle made a telling statement during the season. She said that if polygamy were legalized and men were forced to actually split their resources with several wives, the practice would cease to exist because men would not want to share their resources, wealth, or economic security. Consider that for a moment. She effectively admitted that the sole reason men engage in polygamy is because they do not have to give the same treatment to their wives. None of them have to share the financial responsibilities. This is a stinging realization of how polygamy is a system that economically exploits women while dodging legal responsibilities. But Janelle remained in that setup for years. This is not independence. It's a distorted sense of autonomy. influenced by decades of cult ideology that led her to believe that embracing exploitation was somehow a sign of strength. Christine has left this way of thinking behind, though. She's had the therapy. She's got a healthy marriage now with David, a man who treats her as an equal. She's distanced herself enough from the old way of thinking to be able to spot manipulation when it happens. And now that she's looking back at the others who are still operating in that way, she can see what they cannot see about themselves. When Christine is concerned about Janelle or attempting to prod Mary, it's out of care. She wants them to be safe and to be happy. But the tightrope she's walking is extraordinarily fine because Janelle, Mary, Kody, and Robyn are still very much entrenched in the same manipulated thinking, even though they're no longer part of the cult. That sort of programming doesn't undo itself overnight. It takes years to reverse, and for some, it never completely leaves. For any woman who has had to watch the person they love remain in an abusive relationship while maintaining their fine, Christine's stance will all too painfully resonate. You can see the manipulation in full force. You are willing to assist. But the individual who is caught up in the system does not hear you because the system has conditioned them into believing that to take help is weakness. Christine's path out of that way of thinking illustrates the extent to which the others are caught. She's worked to escape. She's established a new life, one in which she is treated as an equal. And when she glances back at the others remaining trapped in those paradigms, she sees precisely what they cannot see regarding themselves. When Christine is attempting to inspire Mary or show concern over Janelle, it is not out of superiority or judgment. It is from one who managed to run from the fire and is now trying to lead others out. She really wants these women to be able to taste the freedom and joy that she has discovered. She does not want anyone to be used or manipulated anymore. The programming goes deep. Within that fundamentalist culture, women were not permitted to be emotional or to complain about their circumstances. They couldn't speak against the priesthood holder, even when he was obviously in error. They were supposed to always be strong and independent, even while they were methodically controlled and manipulated. To admit any struggle was a spiritual failing. To seek help meant you weren't celestial material. It is here that Janelle's concept of independence was totally misplaced. She remained in an abusive relationship for 30 years, insisting she did not need someone to show her strength. She thought resisting concern from other women was evidence of her independence. She felt acknowledging manipulation would render her powerless. But that is not independence. That is a response to trauma masquerading as empowerment. If Janelle were really as independent as she presents herself to be, she would have left already. At the time when the manipulation patterns became unmistakable, she would not still be orbiting Kody's life, attempting to keep a presence with a man who never treated her as a true partner. She would not become defensive when someone who cares about her brings up the fact of continuous manipulation. Christine knows this better than anyone because she lived it. She knows how the programming functions, how it makes you think that tolerating your own abuse is a sign of strength. It separates you from the very support systems that can set you free, and it holds you captive far longer than you should have remained. The only difference is that Christine has escaped, and others are still trapped in that reality. She's attempting to hold on to connections with Janelle, Mary, even Kody and Robyn, but they're living in entirely different realities. Christine can see the manipulation up close. They're still playing the same roles, the same scripts that the cult assigned them decades ago. And nowhere is this more apparent than in Mykelti's reflections on what viewers have been watching for all these years. Mykelti's revelations raise a fundamental question that every SisterWives viewer should be asking. How much of what we've watched for 19 seasons was real? And how much of it was a carefully constructed performance meant to fill airtime and maintain network contracts? The shooting worked to the benefit of TLC, not reality drama. When nothing was organically going on in the life of the Brown family, production intervened and created it. They constructed situations, scripted interactions, and put family members into situations that would never have existed naturally. The kids became props, private moments breached by cameras. Nothing was sacred when there were episodes to be filled and ratings to be sustained. Take the moment of Ariella waking up to equipment in her face on her first day of school. That wasn't a sweet, genuine family moment. It was using a child for content, having a child do family togetherness that wasn't there. And Solomon's hair being brushed by Kody, a dad who never does that. It wasn't sweet, it was a performance. All the real interactions we witnessed must now be suspect when we understand that production worked actively scripting reality to its show's requirements. And Mykelti is an expert witness here. She grew up in that fishbowl. She witnessed the cameras descend upon her childhood, refashion her family's habits, and take private dysfunction and turn it into public spectacle. She saw her father play variations on himself that had little to do with who he actually was when the cameras were off. When the person who lived this is telling you that it was all an act, perhaps it is time to stop arguing over what you saw on screen and begin to trust the people who lived behind the neatly cut scenes. The manufactured conflicts, the scripted resolutions, the conspiracy theories packaged as health concerns, the cult programming presented in the guise of family values. It was all meant to keep viewers hooked while the true dysfunction seethed behind closed doors. For 19 years, Kody and Robyn dictated the terms. They took on the roles of worried parents, adhering to health procedures while aggressively grasping at ill-fated conspiracy theories. They played the role of engaged parents while keeping their noses clean behind the scenes. They blamed their vaccinated relatives for the isolation they had brought about. They used their kids as content providers and manipulated TLC standards to dictate the story. But now, the individuals who experienced it are coming forward. Mykelti and Christine are sharing the truth that reveals how the performance veered away from what actually happened. And with every new admission, you can't help but ask yourself, what else was fabricated? What other meticulously crafted moments did we believe simply because we witnessed them on TV? So here we are, 19 seasons into a show that is perhaps performance art the whole time.